It all started with a smirk that didn't belong to me. I swear, I would have denied it 100 times over if anyone asked, but the moment she leaned against the lockers, flipping her hair with that careless grace, my heart had betrayed me already. I was supposed to be focused math homework, English essays blending into the background, but there she was like a living painting in motion, and suddenly I wasn't invisible at all. Her name was Lila, and she had this way of looking at the world like it was hers to unravel. Like every joke, every whispered secret, was part of a story only she could understand. She laughed too loud sometimes, tripping over her own words in that awkward, intoxicating way that made people included forget how to breathe properly. I, on the other hand, was the kind of girl who collected shadows, who moved quietly between classrooms like I was supposed to be nothing more than furniture. My books were my armor, my notebooks the only friends that didn't judge. But Lila made the walls of this old school vibrate. She didn't notice me at first, not really. I was just another uniformed blur passing her on the stairs or sliding past in the cafeteria line. And yet somehow she saw me. It was the smallest things at first. A glance that lingered a heartbeat too long. The corner of her mouth twitching when she thought no one was watching. That impossible sparkle in her eyes when she noticed me laughing quietly with someone else. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. Maybe she was just kind. Maybe her smile was for everyone. But no. My gut had a funny way of screaming truths that my mouth refused to speak, and it screamed Lila. 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 One Wednesday, the hallway was unusually quiet, winter sunlight streaming through the tall windows like liquid gold. I was trapped between two lockers, pretending to search for my history textbook while actually staring at her. She was leaning against the opposite wall, head tilted, scrolling through her phone. I couldn't help it. I laughed at some private joke of mine, a nervous habit, and that's when it happened. She looked up. Our eyes locked. The world contracted to just the two of us. My stomach did the kind of somersaults that defied all laws of physics, and I wanted to vanish right there. But she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled. Not the polite, passing smile you give a stranger. A smile that felt like a secret, an invitation I had no words for yet. I should have run. Any normal person would have. And maybe I wanted to because it was terrifying, this raw, exposed feeling. But I didn't. My feet were cemented to the ground as if gravity itself had decided I belonged there, staring at her like a fool in love. The next day, I found a note tucked inside my notebook. My handwriting wasn't involved, but I knew immediately it was hers. I see you. Always. Nothing more. Just those 4 words looping around in my chest, twisting and knotting themselves into my thoughts until I couldn't concentrate on anything else. Math formulas blurred, history dates evaporated, all of it irrelevant because she existed and she had said she saw me. I carried that note everywhere. I read it so many times that the edges became soft and worn, almost fragile like my feelings. Each glance at it was a thrill and a torment. What did she see in me? Was it just curiosity? Or something more dangerous, more delicious? Dangerous was the right word. Lila wasn't subtle. She moved through the hallways like she owned the air itself, and yet here she was, secretive and precise in the way she included me. A small brush of hands when passing by, the occasional whisper when teachers weren't watching. Every encounter was a spark. Every spark threatened to ignite something I had no permission to feel. The school was full of whispers and rumors, and while some girls noticed her attention to me, none could have guessed what it really meant. We were careful, both of us. Careful and reckless at once. We laughed at nothing, shared stolen glances, and sometimes, just sometimes, our hands would brush as if by accident. And yet, neither of us dared the truth out loud. Lunch became our battlefield of subtlety. She'd sit just far enough away that people wouldn't notice, leaning toward me with a conspiratorial grin, dropping crumbs of conversation that made my pulse thrum like a drumline. I'd answer softly, trying to match her intensity, trying to be as bold as she seemed to demand. "I like your scarf," she said once, flicking the fringes with her fingers. My stomach dropped. How ordinary, how simple, and yet my mind exploded. I wanted to pull her into a corner, tell her everything, but I smiled and muttered a quiet thanks, my voice barely audible. She winked, and that wink held centuries of promise. Even in the library where silence was law, our connection found ways to assert itself. Fingers brushing over the same page, shoulders accidentally colliding, breaths catching when we read side by side. People walked by. oblivious to the tension coiling between us like a cat ready to pounce. I had never known such intensity could exist in a classroom, in a world built of rules and schedules and mandatory attendance. Then came the first fight. It was nothing really, a misunderstanding over a shared project. Words said too sharply, tempers flaring. But it shook me. Not because of the disagreement, it was trivial, but because for the first time the fragile thread connecting us trembled. The hallway seemed colder, the lights harsher. I realized then that I wasn't just drawn to her presence. I needed it. Needed her. By the time we reconciled, I had learned something terrifyingly beautiful. Love could be patient, yes, but it could also be merciless. She had a hold on me, one that I couldn't name and didn't want to. And when she finally approached, brushing her hand against mine in apology, I felt like I might burst into flames. Her eyes searched mine, and for a heartbeat I forgot everything else. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition, a feeling that we were somehow meant to collide in this messy adolescent chaos. I wanted to laugh at how cliched it felt, but I couldn't. Not when she leaned closer, whispering, "Don't ever doubt us." And just like that, every insecurity, every quiet day I had spent in the shadows vanished. The following weeks were a dance of stolen moments. Hallway whispers, library conspiracies, shared lunches, and secret messages left in the margins of notebooks. Our connection deepened, the boundaries of friendship and something more blurred until they didn't exist at all. There was one particular afternoon I'll never forget. Rain had started tapping against the classroom windows, a soft, relentless rhythm that made the whole school feel suspended in time. We were alone in the art room, paints and brushes scattered like chaos made tangible. I was lost in my sketchbook trying to focus, but she leaned over, resting her chin on my shoulder. The warmth of her body, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her fingers traced patterns on the back of my hand, it was a revelation. My pulse raced, my breath caught, and I realized with stark clarity that this was love. Terrifying, overwhelming, beautiful love. Her voice was soft, almost shy. "I've wanted to do this for weeks," she admitted, and then our lips met. It was tentative at first, a question, a promise, a confession all in one. My hands found her waist, hers cupped my face. Time didn't exist. The rain outside, the empty hallway, the mundane rules of our lives, they all fell away. That moment changed everything. We could no longer hide behind smiles or stolen glances. Every touch, every whispered word became a declaration, a vow that we would navigate this storm together, no matter how messy or impossible it seemed. And yet, it wasn't all perfect. We fought, we cried, we doubted ourselves and each other. But each trial, each misunderstanding, only made the moments of connection more precious. Every apology was a thread weaving us closer, every shared secret a fortress against the world that didn't understand us. By the time spring arrived, everything had shifted. The halls were brighter, the days longer, and our hearts unshakably entwined. Lila and I had learned the dangerous, exhilarating art of young love. We had found each other in a world that tried to ignore us, and in that discovery we found something eternal. The weeks after that rainy afternoon in the art room were a whirlwind of stolen moments and secret smiles. Every corner of the school seemed to hum with the electricity of our connection, but with it came a constant, gnawing anxiety. High school was a world full of whispers, rumors, and eyes that never truly looked away. And we were vulnerable, two hearts beating in a rhythm the world might not approve of. Our bond deepened, yes, but so did the complications. Lila was fearless in many ways. Her laughter loud, her opinions sharp, her confidence magnetic, but she also carried a restlessness that made me anxious. She would disappear at the edges of the school day, slipping away to unknown places, returning with a radiant smile that didn't quite hide the secrets behind it. I tried not to care, tried to trust, but every time she drifted away, a tight knot formed in my chest. It was during one of those absences that the first real tension between us erupted. I had been waiting by the lockers, my notebook clutched to my chest, ready to share some small victory in art class when she didn't show. Minutes became hours, and by the time she arrived, her hair damp from a sudden spring rain, her eyes bright but evasive, I felt a swirl of relief and frustration. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Lila froze just for a heartbeat, and then she smiled, an apology or maybe a deflection. "Just needed a walk," she said lightly, but the hesitation in her eyes spoke volumes. "A walk?" I echoed, feeling a strange, unfamiliar anger rise in me. You didn't even tell me. Do you even care how worried I was? Her smile faltered. She reached for my hand, a soft touch meant to soothe, but instead it ignited the fire already burning in my chest. I do care. I really do. I needed a moment. Alone. I wanted to understand, I wanted to forgive, but the ache of being ignored, even briefly, cut deeper than I expected. You don't get to vanish without explanation, I said, my voice trembling. Not from me. The hallway felt suddenly too small, too exposed. Lila's gaze softened, regret flickering across her face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. You mean too much to me. The words were meant to heal, and part of me wanted to melt into them, to let everything go. But another part, me pride, my fear, my untested emotional courage held firm. Then don't do it again, I whispered, almost to myself. Please. She nodded, squeezing my hand once, a silent promise. And just like that, the storm passed, but it left traces, a subtle tension that lingered in the spaces between us. I realized then that love wasn't just butterflies and stolen kisses. It was fragile, demanding, and terrifyingly human. The school year marched on, each day a mixture of mundane routines and electric anticipation. We shared notebooks, sat together in classes, whispered across tables in the cafeteria, and yet there was always a careful choreography in our movements. We were careful, yes, but also reckless when no one was looking. It was during chemistry lab that we first broke the invisible rules we had set for ourselves. Hands brushed while reaching for the same beaker, and when our eyes met, the room seemed to tilt. I felt my pulse hammer in my ears as Lila's hand lingered a fraction longer than necessary. A silent agreement passed between us, unspoken but understood. Boundaries existed only in public, not here, not now. Later in the library, we pushed the envelope even further. A shared corner, hidden by tall shelves and stacks of books, became our sanctuary. Fingers intertwined under the table, whispers of encouragement and teasing exchanged in barely audible tones. I laughed at a joke she whispered, my head resting against her shoulder, feeling warmth spread through me like sunlight. And then, inevitably, our lips met again, slower this time, more certain, more claiming. But paradise is rarely without shadows. Our secrecy was a double-edged sword. Every glance from a teacher, every rumor passed in the hall, every subtle judgment from classmates gnawed at us. Lila, in her boldness, seemed less affected. I, on the other hand, felt every whispered word like a knife, cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. It all came to a head one afternoon in April. The school was buzzing with news of an upcoming art competition. I had been working tirelessly on a piece inspired by our secret moments, the fleeting emotions, the stolen glances, and I wanted her to see it. But when I presented it to her, her reaction wasn't what I expected. She studied it silently, fingers brushing over the edges of the paper, her expression unreadable. And then she stepped back, a frown creasing her forehead. It's amazing, she said carefully, but there was something in her tone that made my heart sink. Isn't it good? I asked, voice tight with anticipation and fear. It's perfect, she said again, softer this time. But it's us. Too much, maybe. If anyone saw, the words hung in the air like a storm cloud. She wasn't criticizing the art. She was warning me, warning us. The reality I had tried to ignore hit me like a tidal wave. Our love, beautiful and intoxicating as it was, carried risks. Exposure, ridicule, misunderstanding. And Lila, ever pragmatic beneath her fearless exterior, recognized it. I can't risk it, she whispered, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Not yet. I'm not ready to fight the world with us. My chest tightened. I wanted to argue, to insist, to throw caution aside and declare my feelings to anyone who would listen. But I also knew she was right. She had always been the one to balance daring with reason. And so, reluctantly, painfully, I nodded, trying to mask my heartbreak behind a fragile smile. The days that followed were tense. We still spoke, still shared small smiles and hidden touches, but the air between us carried an unspoken grief. I missed the reckless abandon of our stolen moments, the certainty of her closeness, the intoxicating rush of first love. And yet, in the quiet, I understood that this was part of growing, part of learning to protect something precious. Then came prom. The glittering dreamlike night where everyone pretended to be someone they weren't, or perhaps tried to be everything they were. Lila arrived, radiant in a flowing blue dress, hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes bright with anticipation. I had chosen a simple, elegant gown, comfort over spectacle, but my heart raced when she approached, offering a hand that trembled slightly. "Ready?" she asked, her voice soft but charged with unspoken promise. I took her hand, feeling the warmth and certainty I had craved for months. "Ready," I whispered back. The music swelled, the lights shimmered, and for a moment, we were the only two people in the room. Our first dance was hesitant, tentative, our bodies close but careful. And then as the song deepened, we let go. The barriers of fear and hesitation fell away, replaced by laughter, whispers, and gentle kisses exchanged between spins and twirls. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, almost collisions with friends, whispered jokes from other couples. But it didn't matter. We were together, and that was enough. The years of secrecy, anxiety, and longing crystallized into a single radiant truth. We had survived the trials, the doubts, the tension, and emerged stronger, closer, unshakably bonded. After prom, the world didn't disappear and challenges didn't vanish. But we had learned to navigate them, to communicate, to trust. Our love, once fragile and tentative, had grown resilient, tempered by the fires of adolescent trials and the quiet triumph of understanding one another. The final days of school arrived like a gentle tide, carrying with them the bittersweet knowledge of endings and beginnings. Graduation loomed, the corridors emptied, lockers emptied, and yet our connection remained, unbroken by time or circumstance. On the last day, we stood together in the now empty hallway, sunlight spilling across the floor, golden and warm. Fingers intertwined, breaths synchronized, hearts aligned. Lila turned to me, her eyes filled with the same fierce, tender intensity one had fallen for months ago. "I'm glad I saw you," she whispered. "Always." I smiled, tears threatening, laughter trembling in my throat. "I'm glad you saw me too." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. We had survived the chaos, the fear, the uncertainty. And in the quiet aftermath, we had found something eternal, beautiful, and unshakably ours. The summer after graduation arrived like a soft promise. The air smelled of jasmine and sun-warmed concrete, of possibilities and beginnings. Lila and I had decided to spend the weeks before college traveling, exploring the small towns along the East Coast, seeking little adventures that didn't require grand plans or big budgets, just the freedom to exist as ourselves, without whispers or judgment. Our first morning, in a small coastal town with the ocean stretching endlessly beyond the dunes, I woke to the sound of her laughter echoing down the hall of our rented little cottage. She was already outside, chasing seagulls in a way that made me smile even before I was fully awake. Pulling on my sandals, I stepped into the sunlight, and she turned, eyes bright, hair wind-tossed, arms spread wide as if to catch the entire world. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she called, her voice a melody. "Good morning," I answered, smiling as I ran toward her. "You didn't even wait for coffee?" She shrugged, the carefree tilt of her shoulders making my heart flutter. "The world won't wait for coffee. Come on, let's go." We spent the morning walking along the shoreline, our hands brushing, fingers intertwining naturally. Lila picked up a smooth stone and tossed it into the waves. "Throw one too," she urged. I did, watching it skip once, twice before sinking. And as I glanced at her, sunlight glinting off her hair, I realized that every moment with her felt like a lesson in the art of living fully. She had taught me bravery, not the kind that shouted, but the quiet courage to love and be loved despite fear, despite uncertainty. That afternoon, we discovered a tiny bookstore tucked between a cafe and a florist. Lila's eyes lit up and I followed her in, pretending to browse while secretly watching her move among the shelves. She picked up a tattered novel, flipping through pages with delicate care. "You'd love this," she said, holding it out to me. "It's about two girls who find each other against all odds." I smiled, taking the book into my hands. "Sounds familiar," I teased, and her laugh filled the small space, warm and genuine, wrapping around me like a hug. We left the store hand in hand, wandering the cobblestone streets, sharing stories and dreams for the future. We talked about college, about the cities we'd live in, the art we'd make, the people we'd meet. And through it all, there was an unspoken promise that no matter where life took us, we would always return to each other. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, we sat on a grassy hill overlooking the ocean. Lila rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt her hand slip into mine, fingers curling around mine in a way that felt like home. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" I asked softly, tracing circles on the back of her hand. "All the time," she admitted. "From the hallways, the whispers, the fear. To this. To us." I nodded, tears prickling my eyes. "I was so scared back then, Lila. I didn't know if we'd survive everything, but we did. And now it feels like anything is possible." She lifted her head, brushing a strand of hair from my face, her eyes glistening with the reflection of the sunset. "We are possible," she said simply. "We made it through together. And that's all that matters." The days flowed like that, effortless yet profound. We learned the rhythms of each other's mornings, the way our laughter blended, the quiet language of glances and touches that required no words. We visited art galleries, drew in sketchbooks on sunlit benches, swam in the ocean until our skin glowed with salt and sun, and at night under the stars we whispered dreams and promises, hearts beating in sync with the gentle waves. One particularly memorable afternoon, we stumbled upon a small community theater. A rehearsal was in progress, a lively, chaotic scene of actors and directors shouting lines and arranging props. Lila's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Come on," she said, tugging me into the room. "Let's audition for something. Anything." I hesitated, but her enthusiasm was contagious. We were called onto the stage, our nerves mingling with excitement. For the first time in a long time, I felt that same rush I had felt in the hallways of our school, the thrill of being seen, the vulnerability of putting ourselves out into the world. We improvised scenes, laughed until our sides ached, and for that brief, brilliant moment, nothing existed outside the stage. Afterward, sitting on the steps outside the theater, Lila rested her head on my shoulder again. "You were amazing," she whispered. "I love seeing you like this. Fearless." "You make me fearless," I admitted, heart swelling. As the summer waned, we returned to our hometown with a sense of calm certainty. College loomed ahead, new challenges, new environments, and new people. But we faced it with a quiet confidence, the knowledge that the foundation we had built, trust, love, understanding, was unshakable. On the night before our departure, we sat together in my room, surrounded by the familiar clutter of home, the walls holding the echoes of our shared past. Lila's hand found mine, fingers entwined in the easy, natural way they always did. "I'll miss this," she said softly. "I'll miss this too," I replied, leaning into her. "But we're not really leaving, are we?" She shook her head, a gentle smile curving her lips. "No, not really. We carry each other with us wherever we go." The next morning we packed our bags, said tearful goodbyes to family and friends, and boarded the train that would take us to separate colleges. Yet, even in that moment of physical separation, our hearts remained tethered. We promised to visit, to write, to call, to never let distance erode what we had built. And so life unfolded in the gentle, patient way it always does. We faced new cities, new people, and the inevitable growing pains of adulthood, but we did it together, or at least together in spirit. Letters arrived in small packages, postcards with hastily scribbled messages, phone calls late at night when the world was quiet. Each one was a thread, weaving the fabric of our ongoing story. The first winter break, we reunited in a small cafe in the city where our colleges were closest. The moment we saw each other, all the distance and months apart melted away. Lila's smile was the same, bright and unyielding, and my heart leapt as if no time had passed. We walked the snowy streets hand in hand, sharing hot chocolate, laughing at the chaos of crowded sidewalks, slipping into quiet corners where the city felt like it belonged to us alone. That night, as we lay together in the small dorm room she had rented, I realized something profound. Love, true love, was not just about passion or stolen moments. It was about endurance, about patience, about choosing each other every single day despite challenges, distance, and fear. College years came and went, a mix of stress, growth, friendships, and self-discovery. But through it all, Lila and I remained a constant in each other's lives. Our relationship was no longer a secret, no longer a whispered exchange in hallways. We learned to navigate the world with our love intact, to advocate for ourselves and each other, to embrace the fullness of who we were. By the time we graduated from college, our bond had matured into something steady, something real, something unbreakable. We had faced the uncertainty of youth, the turbulence of first love, and the trials of distance, and emerged with a love that was radiant and grounded, tender yet fierce. On a warm spring evening, back in the coastal town where our summer adventure had begun years before, Lila took my hands in hers. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and rose. Her eyes, full of the same fearless intensity that had drawn me in all those years ago, met mine. "I have something to ask you," she said, voice trembling with emotion, though her smile remained steady. I laughed softly, heart racing. "You don't have to ask. You know I'll say yes." She shook her head, pulling a small box from her pocket. My breath caught as she opened it, revealing a delicate ring, simple and perfect. "Will you marry me?" she asked, her voice low, full of hope and certainty. Tears spilled over without restraint. "Yes," I whispered, laughing through sobs. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." We embraced, the waves of the ocean echoing our joy, the sky a witness to a love that had endured so much and emerged victorious. It was a quiet, perfect moment, full of the kind of happiness that comes not from grandeur but from the simple, unwavering truth of two hearts choosing each other. Years later we would look back on those hallways, the whispered glances, the secret notes, and the fragile beginnings of our love. And we would smile, knowing that every struggle, every stolen moment, every fear had led us to an unshakable, radiant love that had survived the world and time itself. We had grown together, laughed together, cried together, and through it all we had loved each other with a depth and honesty that few ever experience. And in that we found our forever. Summer arrived with a golden light that seemed to promise endless possibilities. Lila and I had spent the weeks after graduation wandering small coastal towns, seeking moments that felt infinite, just the two of us, unbound by rules or expectations. Our days were simple yet profound, wandering along beaches, exploring little bookstores, sketching the sunlight as it danced over waves, sharing meals in cafes that smelled of coffee and pastries. Every glance, every touch, every laugh carried the weight of our history and the excitement of what was to come. One morning, I woke to the sound of Lila's laughter echoing from the porch of the little cottage we'd rented near the shore. She was already outside chasing seagulls with the kind of reckless joy that made me love her even more. Pulling on my sandals, I stepped into the sunlight, and she turned, her hair wind-tossed, eyes sparkling like the ocean behind her. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she called, voice light and teasing. "Good morning," I answered, smiling as I ran to meet her. "You didn't even wait for coffee?" She shrugged, carefree as ever. "The world won't wait for coffee. Come on, let's go." We spent that morning walking along the shoreline, hands brushing, fingers intertwining naturally. Lila picked up a smooth stone and tossed it into the waves. "Throw one too," she urged. I did, watching it skip once, twice before sinking. And as I glanced at her, sunlight glinting off her hair, I realized that every moment with Lila felt like a lesson in living fully. She had taught me courage, not the loud, brash kind, but the quiet bravery of being vulnerable, of loving and being loved despite fear. Afternoons were spent exploring hidden corners of small towns, stumbling upon tiny cafes or little galleries, always finding the magic in mundane places. In one small bookstore, Lila found a tattered novel about two girls who found each other against all odds. She handed it to me with a grin. "You'd love this," she said softly. I smiled, taking the book into my hands. "Sounds familiar," I teased. Her laughter rang like bells in the quiet shop, and I felt warmth spread through me. These were the moments I wanted to keep forever, the simplicity, the intimacy, the feeling of being wholly known. The summer passed in a blur of sun, laughter, and whispered confessions. But even as the season waned, a quiet realization settled in. College loomed ahead, a new chapter that might separate us physically, if not emotionally. We talked endlessly about the future, about campuses, cities, art, careers, and the inevitable uncertainties that adulthood would bring. The night before leaving for our respective colleges, we sat together in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the familiar clutter of my life. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwined in the familiar, comforting way. "I'll miss this," she whispered. "I'll miss this too," I replied, leaning into her. "But we're not really leaving each other, are we?" She shook her head. "No. We carry each other with us wherever we go. The following months tested that promise. Distance, new environments, and the pressures of college life sometimes made our connection feel tenuous. But letters, late-night calls, and shared plans kept us tethered. Every message, every visit, was a thread weaving the fabric of our love stronger than before. Winter break brought our first reunion. We met in a city halfway between our schools, running into each other at a quiet cafe. The moment our eyes met, months of distance fell away. Her smile was the same, radiant and fearless, and my heart leapt as if no time had passed. That evening we walked through snow-dusted streets, hand in hand, laughing at the chaos of city life, sharing whispered promises of the future. Years passed. College ended. Careers began. And through it all our love endured, evolving into something steady, resilient, and unshakable. We had learned to navigate the world together, celebrating victories, comforting each other in losses, growing individually and as a couple. The intimacy we had once hidden in hallways and secret notes became an open, proud declaration of who we were and what we had built. One spring evening, years after that fateful art room kiss, we returned to the coastal town where our summer adventure had begun. The ocean stretched endlessly, a mirror of possibilities and memories. Lila took my hands in hers, eyes full of the same fearless intensity that had captivated me in high school. "I have something to ask you," she said, her voice trembling, though her smile remained steady. "You don't have to ask." I laughed softly, heart racing. "You know I'll say yes." She shook her head, producing a small box. Inside was a delicate ring, simple and perfect. "Will you marry me?" she asked, her voice low, full of hope and certainty. Tears streamed down my face. "Yes," I whispered, laughing through sobs. 1,000 times yes. We embraced, the waves echoing our joy. The sky a witness to a love that had endured every test and emerged stronger. It was a quiet, perfect moment, happiness born not from grandeur, but from the simple truth of two hearts choosing each other, again and again. We planned a small wedding by the ocean, surrounded by family, friends, and the music of waves and laughter. The ceremony was simple, heartfelt, and radiant, a reflection of the love we had nurtured through secrecy, distance, and uncertainty. Lila's eyes met mine throughout, shining with the same promise and devotion that had begun in the hallways of our school. Marriage didn't make our challenges disappear, but it gave us a foundation stronger than fear, doubt, or judgment. We faced life together with all its unpredictability, beauty, and occasional heartbreak, and found joy in the ordinary moments. Morning coffee shared on the porch, late-night walks under the stars, quiet evenings with sketchbooks and shared dreams. Over the years, our love deepened in ways we hadn't imagined as teenagers. We built a home filled with laughter, art, music, and tenderness. We traveled, learned new skills, supported each other through career changes and family dynamics, and never let the pressures of life diminish the intimacy and care that had defined us from the start. One particularly warm evening, sitting together on our porch with the sun dipping behind the horizon, Lila leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. I traced circles on her hand, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "I can't believe how far we've come," I murmured. "Neither can I," she admitted. "From secret glances in hallways to this. Everything we went through. It was worth it. Every fear, every fight, every stolen moment." I smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It was. And I'd do it all again, just to end up here with you." Lila laughed softly, the sound a melody that had become my constant. "Me too," she said, eyes glistening. "Me too." Time continued and we grew older together, learning that love is not only passion but patience, understanding, and unwavering commitment. We faced challenges, losses, setbacks, disappointments, but always returned to each other, stronger, more devoted, and more certain. Our story, which had begun in the uncertain corridors of a high school, had become a life shared fully. A life of adventure, art, tenderness, and laughter. A life in which we never stopped seeing each other, never stopped choosing each other, and never stopped believing that love, real, true, resilient love, could endure anything. On quiet evenings, as we watched the sun set over the ocean from our porch, hands entwined, I often thought of those early days, the stolen glances, the secret notes, the nervous laughter in empty hallways. And I would smile, knowing that every moment of fear and longing had led us to this. A love profound, radiant, and eternal. Because in the end, Lila had been right all along. She had seen me, truly seen me, and in doing so had changed the course of my life. And I had seen her as she deserved, completely and without hesitation. Together we had built a world of our own machina, world of trust, laughter, intimacy, and joy. And that world, small and radiant as it was ours forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.